Welcome to episode number 6 of the DNA podcast, Destiny Network Amplified. So glad you're with us. We're picking up where we left off last time, talking about the 21st century secret war, secret crisis, the mental health crisis, how it impacts us as pastors, what we can do to stay mentally whole, healthy, spirit, soul, and body, and then also to lead healthy people. And so we have been joined by 2 special guests, Billy Baker, who's from Denton, Texas, and a licensed professional counselor, supervisor, and then Joe Hargreaves, all the way from Lincoln, England, in the United Kingdom, who's a psychotherapist, leader, writer. Her and her husband also pastor a church, and she loves to integrate theology and therapy. And so we had some great conversations last time about all of these physiological things that happen with the stress that especially pastors face from the rejection, loss of relationships, all of those things. It's some of the things that we can begin to do, not just when it happens, but also preventative care. What can we do to stay healthy? And we kind of left off talking about rhythms, the rhythm of our life, and how there's certain rhythms that we can adopt that help us not get to the place where we're burnt out, because we want to be in this thing for the long haul. We don't want to start strong. We want to finish strong. And so I just thought I'd start some things I learned 16 years ago. I've been practicing, probably always need some maybe touch-ups or tweak them a little bit. But I learned for myself a couple things. Number one, the importance of journaling. Prior to about 16 years ago, I was never given to much introspection. But while I took my first sabbatical, I realized, oh my goodness, I thought I was in peace, but I had no idea what peace was, right? And I realized that rather than having emotions, my emotions have me. So I just started journaling about my emotions, what emotions I experienced the day before, starting to identify them. And that has evolved into a whole lot of things in my journaling time. But part of my regular rhythm is also just starting my prayer time with God, not in talking a lot, but just being quiet, being still, taking deep breaths, and surrendering to Him. I think a lot of times part of the pressure that we put on ourselves as pastors is this whole control thing, how we love to be in control, and we lie to ourselves that we're actually in control, when actually we're not. We're really not in control of much at all. So I've just learned, remind myself when I want to take control. No, I surrender. I've got no capacity to control this thing. I surrender. And just surrendering everything to God. And those things have been part of my daily rhythm that continue to help me. So speaking to some of those rhythm things, again, I know we touched on them last time, but maybe we can just take them a step further. Either one of you that would like to.
There's a great app called the Pause app. And when you were speaking right now, it reminded me of that app, because it's literally 1 minute of a prayer of surrender. I give everything and everyone to you, Lord. Mm-hmm. To you, Lord, I give everyone and everything. And it really is a great mental health reset. It's a great nervous system reset. And it's 60 seconds. And for people who want to begin incorporating that throughout their day, they could do it once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and again in the evening. Like, that could be a really great daily rhythm that's 60 seconds. It's a place to begin if you're not sure.
I love that. I'm going to do that. Ryan, can I just say, I love it. I really love to hear when pastors have really done the work. They've done the stuff. They've been through it. They've done it. I really think that the people we lead are so much better. When the leader gets healthy, everybody gets healthy, hey? And that just, I see that happen. And I love it to hear when people are in a place of rhythms that aren't about striving, that aren't about trying to find your next bit of sermon material, that it's just about sitting in a place of being loved. And it can just, when you've got so much to do and you're pastoring a church, the thought of, just sit there and remember that you're loved, you can almost roll your eyes at that, can't you? And think, yeah, that's nice for people that don't have to do everything that I have to do and carry all the weight of these people and cast this vision and all the things that pastors do. But the practice of sitting, of journaling, of the things that we've talked about, and focusing particularly on the fact that you have a lover of your soul, a lifter of your head, is really powerful spiritually. But again, getting into the neurobiology of it, that when you focus on how loved you are, and also how lovable you are. Because I know that often when you're in ministry, you don't feel very lovable because you see all the bits that you don't want to show other people. So, but when you focus on the fact that God loves you and that you're lovable, even getting into Ephesians, that God's love is high and wide and deep and long, and Romans, that nothing can separate you from the love of God, life, death, angel, demons, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, bad moods, people leaving your congregation, nothing can separate you from the love of God. When you can kind of spend some time thinking on that, trying to live and lean into the reality of that, what happens is your body, your brain signals that to release oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone, and it's incredibly grounding. It really helps you ground yourself in that parasympathetic part of your nervous system that Billy mentioned in the last episode. And the wonderful thing about oxytocin is that when you're flooded with oxytocin, it helps get rid of cortisol. Cortisol, you need cortisol to get you up in the morning, to help you focus, to drive us. But when we have too much cortisol, usually as a result of so much stress and that fear narrative of not being enough, being too much, too much cortisol causes dis-ease in your body, or disease, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. But oxytocin helps get rid of cortisol, or oxytocin drives out the effects of cortisol, which is exactly what we read in 1 John of perfect love. Oxytocin casts out fear, cortisol, but that literally happens at a physical, neurobiological level. So I would say take some time to focus on the fact, not just that you're loved, because often we can accept that, but that you are lovable. That you have a lover of your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions, and that really can help be a practice. That can be a practice that helps ground you. I found that helps me a lot.
Yeah, I think that here's my concern. There's pastors listening, leaders listening. They're like, oh, I know God loves me. Well, yeah, that's not the issue, whether you know it with your head, because the reality is that this gives you an opportunity to move into the experience of his love, not just the head knowledge of his love. And for me, that's a huge difference. And I think those are so important things to adopt in your rhythm, because we think about getting into God's presence to prepare a message, but really the most important thing we can do is get into God's presence to prepare the messenger. And I think too many times we have a great message that is prepared, but we haven't done the things in regular rhythm that adequately prepare the messenger, which I would assert is more important than a good message being prepared.
Oh, good.
Anyway, so
Really
just some
good.
thoughts. Speaking of rhythms, I realized a little while ago that, for all of my life, the rhythm has been a holy Sunday afternoon nap. And it seemed more so for me as a pastor, especially when we're 2 services. And now, honestly, we're thinking about a 3rd service, and I'm thinking about how tired I'm going to be on Sunday afternoon. And over the last couple of months, I've experimented with doing something. Sometimes I still take a nap, but I have now experimented. And yesterday, we're recording this on a Monday, I got home and I was really tired. I woke up way earlier than I normally do yesterday morning. And I decided I'm not going to nap. I'm going to change my rhythm. I went outside. We talked about going outside in the last episode. Got in the sun. I got on a float and sat in my pool for 2.5 hours.
Nice.
I was really interesting. It was kind of a personal experiment, but I flipped up the rhythm. And what I realized is when I went to bed that night, I wasn't any more tired than if I took a nap. I probably was less tired, but then I went right to sleep. So talk about some of those natural things that we don't think often as pastors. I know we touched on it a little bit in the last podcast. We talked about grounding, which may have freaked some people out, but if you do the scientific research, it's not really that crazy. And after all, God is maker of heaven and earth. But just the effect of sun with vitamin D, other things. Speak into some of that.
One of the things that came to my mind when Joe was talking about the increase of oxytocin, another way to increase oxytocin is a 2-minute hug. When you embrace and really in that nice, tight, bear hug embrace, after 2 minutes, your body is releasing oxytocin. So that's another very practical way to help remove some of the cortisol in your body. Just hug someone, hug your spouse, hug your friend. 2 minutes. It goes by very quickly. I do this with my couples in our sessions. We'll end our session with a 2-minute hug. And more often than not, it starts with 2 minutes? That's a long time. And then it ends with, oh, wow, that went by really quickly. And so, like, it may sound like a long time, but it does take about 2 minutes for the oxytocin to get flowing.
I love that. That's like a therapeutic version of a holy kiss, isn't it?
Yes.
Therapeutic hug, get some oxytocin. It's really interesting about Sunday afternoon naps. I find that when I finish church, I feel so tired and so hungry. Sunday is always the day where my healthy eating goes out of the window because I just crave carbs. I want to eat chocolate. And yeah, it's the worst day of the week for my diet. But I notice that when I want to go home and have a nap, which is totally thwarted at the minute because my kids are 11, 9, and 4, so none of them want me to nap. The littlest one is now too old to nap, and the oldest ones just aren't interested at all. But I find for me, often when I want to go for a nap, it's because I'm soul weary. Again, it's that my soul is weary, and actually my brain is so busy. The only way I can shut it off is by going to have a nap. I realise that's often the motivation between me, and I am a champion napper. I had this phrase, and I love this phrase. I don't know if it's made it over to the US, but in the UK, there's this phrase that young mums use when they have little ones of naps save lives, and I totally agree. Nap has saved my life many, many times. But often it's about me just wanting to switch off. I'm so overwhelmed. And there are other ways, like you said, Ryan, to go and regulate. I love the thoughts. Getting into a pool post church and sitting on a sun lounger for 2 hours sounds amazing. Obviously, live in the UK, weather is not conducive to that at all. But I think you've absolutely hit on something there that instead of switching our brain off and kind of just trying to shut down, what can we do to nourish us, to enrich us? Like you said, the sunlight, the water's incredibly powerful. In the break, we talked about cold plunging, didn't we? And getting in water, even gargling water is very helpful, because when you gargle water, you activate your vagus nerve, the same nerve that gets stimulated when you sing, and it's the key part of the parasympathetic nervous system. It runs from your 10th cranial nerve all the way down all your major organs, and when that is online and working well, you're grounded. So there's things that you can do: singing, humming, gargling water. I know usually after a stressful Sunday, it's tempting to want to go home and gargle a big old glass of wine, but it doesn't have the same effect. You want to gargle water, anything that helps nourish you. And I think often we just think, we should just nourish our soul and nourish our spirit and read the word. Think about things that nourish your soul and your body as well.
Yeah, speaking of your body, I think one thing that I have learned that totally helps me to manage stress is a regular rhythm of exercise. This is one thing we haven't talked about and probably doesn't get talked enough about in pastor circles. Again, we like to focus on our spiritual health and often leave aside our physical health. That plays in also to our emotional health.
It does.
Absolutely.
I can't remember, Billy, if I brought this up when I was with you guys last at your church in Denton, but I have this dilemma at the minute because we serve cookies and wonderful things before our service, and I'm really aware that excess sugar causes inflammation. When your body's inflamed, you reduce serotonin. It's impactful for your body. And thinking, gosh, often we really don't think about this in church circles, do we? When we look at the donuts, the sweet treats, all the things that we have at church, and we forget that actually God is really concerned with the whole person, spirit, soul, and body. And so, yeah, I think we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater or the body out with the poor theology. We want to be mindful of exercise, eating right. Gut health is so, because your brain and your gut are linked, again, via the vagus nerve. There's a direct link. If you're not doing well in your gut, then it wouldn't be surprising that you're not doing well in your thinking, that you feel depressed, that your capacity is shrunken. So I think yes, God's concern for us holistically. Often we're less concerned than God is.
So good. So good. So let's just let's explore this topic for just a minute. Maybe somebody is doing the rhythms, still struggling, or maybe because they haven't been doing the rhythms, they're in a really rough place. They are out of balance. And how does one know? and what should a pastor consider when it's time to consult therapy, to get a professional counselor, somebody to help you? And then how can pastors view that as a tool of wisdom rather than weakness?
Both are great questions. The thing is, whenever we are vulnerable, it's actually the opposite of weakness. It shows strength. Mm-hmm. It shows determination. It shows the humanity that we keep going back to others. It models for others that it's okay to not be okay, that it's okay to ask for help and to need help. And I think that's such an important message, when you think about pastors and the number of ears that they influence on any given, Sunday, just normalizing from the pulpit that mental health is so important, and being aware of where we are and all of the things that we talked about, being vulnerable with self, having awareness within ourselves. Knowledge is powerful. The more we know, the more we can grow because we understand, right? And so I think it's important that pastors just begin to normalize even their own experience. I love, Ryan, how you shared about your own journaling and how important and that has been in your own journey. Talking about that in and of itself normalizes that for other people. And I think that's just a really big piece that's missing.
I think I love that you keep talking about normalizing, because we can be very good at over spiritualizing, can't we? And then we can be kind of accepting of medicalizing, but normalizing needs language and understanding, doesn't it? And I think if the leader's leading in that way, then and helping lead the congregation into that understanding of normalizing, that even around trauma, because some of that normalizing, it's really normal that you behave like that, or feel like you have 5 different versions of yourself if you've experienced terrible trauma. Because often what happens is we spiritualize and go, you've got a demon, which can be true at times. That can absolutely be true. Powers, principalities, all that kind of thing. But we can just over spiritualize things or medicalize things, go and get this from the pharmacist, the doctor, or however it works. And I've got absolutely no problem with that. I think that can be really helpful for part of people's story. But just beginning to normalize, if you've been through trauma, then it's very likely that, of course, you find this vulnerability difficult or connection difficult. You find it hard to want to sign up or connect or whatever it might be. And I think if the leader can be aware of that and have language for that and can normalize that, then it really, we see that kind of what's sorry, I didn't want to give a top-down model of leadership at all, but often when the leader's leading in a certain way, it gets caught, doesn't it? Culture, all that kind of stuff gets caught and taught. And so I think just be careful what people are catching and what you're teaching, and just be really mindful about, healthy language around mental health, emotional health, well-being.
So really, really good. You said something a minute ago, Joe. You said, if you've experienced trauma. My assertion is that if you've pastored for more than 2 years, you've experienced trauma of some sort, right? Maybe you haven't identified it as such, but whenever there's a loss of relationship, that's a traumatic event in somebody's life. Just a couple months ago, I was struggling with some of the kind of thoughts that we've talked about, both in this episode and in our last episode. Just wondering, oh man, a terrible leader. If I was a better leader, this wouldn't have happened. And for a couple of days, those thoughts were eating me up. Even though I have these rhythms going on in my life, that doesn't make me immune to these thoughts. You said vulnerability is good, so I'm sharing this in hopes maybe somebody listening can identify with this. And so all those thoughts were going on. And on the outside, I was able to put on a good face, but on the inside, it was eating me up. And in my time with God, trying to surrender everything, I said, Lord, what is going on? And I felt He strongly spoke something in my spirit, no audible voice, but I just knew He was saying, this is a trauma response. And I'm like, wow. And then I started considering, all the times that I've made a decision that people didn't like and they've left the church and how I felt and all of these things. And I was, that's exactly what this is. And so I said, Lord, what do I do about it? Do I need to see a therapist? Am I at a place, do I need to see a therapist? And I just sensed Him say, you need to get where I'm at. And immediately I knew, enter His gates with thanksgiving enter his courts with praise. And I stopped right then. I started making a list that I could read and review. Here are the things I'm thankful for. And I think I started something like, I have a grateful heart and I'm thankful for, and I just began to write them down. Something began to shift. And as I felt it shift, I kept going. I kept giving thanks, and it broke. It absolutely broke. And so I start every day. Now, since that moment, another part of my rhythm has been, I have a grateful heart and I'm thankful for, just making a list of the things that I'm thankful for. And you've already talked about all the things that it does physiologically for us. But let's say, again, a pastor's doing all those stuff. When is it time for them to find a therapist? How do they recognize it's time? And then where do they look?
Billy, we work in a slightly different way in terms of where do you look in the UK. So I'll absolutely let you handle that question. But I think anytime's a good time. I would say anytime's a good time just to be able to process. Trauma is often unprocessed stuff that hasn't had a witness. Nobody's been able to witness it for you. Can I get a witness? Amen type of thinking is that if somebody can witness your experience, your brain almost files it away. So having that's what happens. I explain it as it's like having all these memories, all of these thoughts, these thought loops that we get stuck in is like having paper all over a desk. And every time somebody comes in and opens the door, the papers go everywhere. Seeing a therapist helps you file the papers. It doesn't shred them. It doesn't say that they didn't exist, that it doesn't matter. It helps you file them away. So every time someone comes into your office door, the papers don't go everywhere. You don't get triggered. You don't end up back in that situation because you filed them away. So I would say any time is a good time to seek wise counsel, to have help, to have support. A good therapist can help you process trauma, clarify your boundaries, even help you hear God's voice for yourself. But I think really, if you're looking for a real line in the sand, when is a good time? It's when you feel stuck in behaviors, or when they become really harmful. They become harmful to yourself, your own well-being, or for people around you. And gratitude, I love that you mentioned that, because your brain can't actually be anxious and grateful at the same time. It's a neurobiological tug of war. It can't do the two, which we already read in Philippians 4 verse 6 anyway. It's not a new realization. But yeah, sometimes we think I'm doing all of the stuff, it's just not cutting it. And yeah, if it's damaging, problematic, you feel stuck, then it's time. But I don't know how you do that in the US.
Well, I love how you said all the papers on the desk, and someone walks in, and then all the papers go everywhere. And working with someone can help you file away those papers. It's such a great picture analogy of what's happening in the brain whenever you are speaking with someone. And we said in the last podcast, being a pastor can be a really lonely place to be. Who do you tell when you're losing, members in the church? Who do you tell when you're having this spiritual tug of war because you're experiencing compassion fatigue, because you're still supposed to be right and spiritual and on that pedestal, right? So being in therapy can give you that safe space to just be you, and to, even if all you're doing is getting out all of those thoughts, all of the stressors, all of the fears, all of the worries, just logistically what's happening in your congregation, in that safe space that isn't going anywhere, that's non-judgmental. Like, that space is pretty sacred for you to be in, to experience being able to share your story without judgment, to be able to share your fears, and to be normalized. And I love, Joe, that you said anytime is a good time to go to therapy. Some of the red flags, though, that if you're still on the fence and you don't think any time is a good time, if you go on a sabbatical and you come back and you don't feel refreshed, replenished, encouraged, and ready to move forward with your congregation, then that is a huge red flag that you need to seek help, because you're stuck. Something's not right. If you've experienced that, like that's burnout to the nth degree right there, when you go on sabbatical and you come back and you still don't want to. So I think that's a big red flag. There may be others that you want to point out, Joe, but that's big one that comes to my mind. Even when I say sabbatical, whether it be a month or 2 days, if you don't come back feeling rest, then that's a red flag that you need to take into consideration.
Thank you so much. So good. I as you were talking, you both said, when's a good time to seek a therapist? I think it's always a good time. Even adopting some of these rhythms that have served me well. A couple of years ago, I thought, I need to do a checkup. I think I'm okay, but am I really? How do I really know? Unless I have somebody from the outside. So I spent, 3 months every other week just talking to a therapist, just doing a checkup. Every day, part of our rhythms, well, at least part of my rhythm, is that I brush my teeth more than once a day. And it's still recommended that 2 times a year, every 6 months, you go see a dentist and get your teeth checked, get your teeth cleaned. And I think that's a great metaphor, a great thing. Pastors, in the rhythm of our life, it's stressful. It's not the normal thing. We operate and oversee the business of the church. We are counselors, caregivers, spiritual advisors. We're everything, right? And there's a high demand. We're making decisions that impact so many people, and oftentimes every decision is out there and it's up for criticism. And to think that doesn't have an impact on our soul is probably pretty naive and maybe even ignorant, and it impacts potentially our well-being. So I would encourage you, if you've been in ministry any length of time, not only adopt these rhythms, but seriously consider getting a checkup, talking to somebody. Preferably, you can find a spirit-filled counselor, spirit-filled therapist, a Christian therapist that can help you, but somebody that can help you, and just do a checkup and make sure you're well. Because if we're going to lead healthy churches and we're going to raise up healthy disciples, then we need to be healthy leaders. So let me just give each of you 30, 45 seconds, maybe some closing thoughts that you might have. The last thing that you might want to say to pastors that are tuning into this podcast.
Sorry, we're both being polite, aren't we? Hence the pause. Okay, I'm going to go. I think the thing that I would love to say is, I mentioned it, I think, briefly in the last episode, is you make sense to God. However you feel right now, whether you're overwhelmed, whether you feel numb, whether you're reacting instead of responding, God absolutely understands. And I love all of the verses about his compassion, that he crowns you with compassion. He's slow to anger, abounding in love, full of compassion towards you. And compassion, interestingly, helps us change what part of our brain that we're using. We get out of threat mode and into a more grounded mode. So you make sense. God understands where you're at, and he has compassion towards you. So you make sense would be my parting words.
Well, and my parting words would be something along those lines. I was going to say, you matter, and everything about you matters, from your mental health to your spiritual health to your physical health to your oral hygiene health. Like, every part of you matters, and you are important to God, and he wants to supply you with every need and even desire that you have. And so whether that be through time with him or community or a trusted mentor or therapist, he wants to give you everything that you need, because you matter.
Wow. Ladies, thank you so much. I believe that your contribution to this podcast is a huge blessing to pastors and leaders that are tuning in. And I just want to remind all the pastors that are paying attention. Maybe you're part of Destiny Network, maybe you're not, but you just tuned into this podcast. We're here for you. We're here to support you. We don't want you to be alone. Maybe you're going through this and you need somebody to talk to. Would you reach out to somebody that's in the network? Email me, ryan@lifechurch.net. Get my information. I'd love to stand with you, and let's do this together, because at Destiny Network, we value relationships. We value loving relationships, and we want to be here to care for you so that you can be all that God's called you to be and be an effective leader where God has planted you. So again, ladies, Joe and Billy, thank you so much for investing your time to be part of this podcast. You were an incredible blessing to us. And for all of you that are joining, thanks again for tuning in to the DNA podcast. Next podcast, we're going to be joined by special guest and friend to Destiny Network, Dr. Sam Chan. You're not going to want to miss it. Also, make sure you get registered for Affecting Destiny coming up October 28th through the 30th here in Fort Myers. And our theme this year is Heaven's Frequency. Can you hear it? And so until next time, thanks so much for joining the DNA podcast.